Hey guys, Joe here, and in this video I'm going to show you how by spending $500 a month you can put an extra $22,000 in profit in your pocket. And this is after you have already spent the 500 bucks. Okay? So before we go any further, if you like these types of videos, please hit the like button. This will help other people such as yourself find these videos as well. And consider subscribing because this is what I do, is try to help you make more money, work less, and enjoy life more. And if you think this can help someone, share it. So anyway, what we're using here is the Profit Planner. So this is an app that I built for my own company just because we needed a better way of knowing our numbers and figuring out how, like basically what would happen before we made any changes, right? And so if you've seen any other videos, it goes into this. I'm not going to show you all the inner workings, but I'm going to show you the one module that's in the Future Planner. And what we're going to do here is put in the date. We're going to go to the advertising adjuster and we're going to select all, submit. Okay. So what you see right here, that is the average value per job. Okay. So the way we know this is we'll go into here. This is just a test account. So I only put 3 jobs in here, right? And basically what you do is you put in what the total price is, the materials, the labor, total profit, profit percent, the profit percent automatically shows up. But with this test account, what we're coming with is an average profit of 1666. Now this is gross. This is gross profit. So this is after you paid your labors, this is after the materials, that kind of thing. So this is what's left over after the job. Okay. So going back to here, now I'm going to show you. So we're, the way we're going to figure this out is if you're already advertising on Google or Facebook, then chances are you know about what your average lead cost is. But if you don't currently, I'm just going to make up some numbers. They're somewhat fairly accurate depending on your area, how good you're at advertising, like all that kind of stuff. But in the beginning, we're going to say that it costs you $35 for every lead that comes your way. Okay. Now, the way we figure this out is basically there is, on average, it costs about $3 to $5 for every time someone clicks on an ad. And I guess we'll go through this real quick. So if I type in fence company near me, these are the ads up here. We have one here, we have one here, and then we got one here as well. Okay. So every time we click on this or someone clicks on it, it's going to cost you, it depends, but it could be as cheap as $1, but typically $3 to $5 per click in my area. Now, if it takes you roughly 7 people to visit your website in order to get a lead, well, 7 times 5 is 35, right? Simple enough. Okay. Now we have to look at the number of leads it takes you to book a job. Now, if you are currently getting all your work through referrals, then chances are your closing percent, like the number of leads that you need to come in, you probably only need like 2 or 3 leads for every job that you book. Okay. That's because basically they trust you, because someone else that they trust you. So, it's through association that they trust you. So it's just easier to sell the job. Now, if you're doing Google ads, Facebook ads, things like that, it's not going to be like that. You have to build that trust over like the phone call and when you show up and all that kind of stuff, right? So in this, we're going to say worst case, it takes you 10 leads in order to book a job. So at this point, if you think you could book at least 1 job out of 10, well, then, these numbers are going to be fairly accurate. Okay. Now, what we see here is a few things now. This is the 1666. So this is the average gross profit after materials and labor for each job. Okay. Now, the ad cost per job is $350. So basically, it's cost you $350 for that customer. Now, a lot of people would say, there's no way I'm paying $350 for a customer. But remember, if you've already maxed out your word of mouth and referrals and that kind of thing, well, the next step to get more jobs is you got to start paying for them, right? That's the only way you can get big enough. So that way you can actually start having employees and then you don't have to work as much. Okay. That's how I went from working 80 hours a week down to 5, just because I knew that to bring in more money, I had to get more leads and everything else. Okay. So that's what we have here. So it's $350. So that means that job, the average job that you're going to get is going to make you about $1,300. So again, this is $1,300 that you didn't have in your pocket. The way we came up with 1,300 is basically this is your average profit per job, and then we subtract the ad cost is 350. So then we got 1,316, right? Now we're going to come down to here and we're going to start entering in like what your monthly ad budget is. So when you're first starting out, you might only want to advertise like $500 a month, and that's it. Okay. So what we see here is your additional profit per month is going to be about 18, or actually about almost $1,900. So after you paid $500, you're getting an additional $1,900 in return. So basically you're getting a total of $2,400, but because you spent 500 in ads, you made up like $1,900. Make sense? Okay. So that's for the month. Now for the year, you're making an extra $22,000, or actually over $22,000, just because you advertised $500 a month. And again, this is after you paid that money. So, 500 times 12 is $6,000. And so you put out $6,000, but in return, you got $28,000. So, your profit is $22,000, right? And so once you start getting your feet wet with this kind of thing and you start realizing, oh my God, this actually works. Well, then the natural progression is like, all right, I want to spend more money. Now, you don't want to go from $500 to $5,000 just because you're not going to be able to handle all the leads that are coming in. You're not going to be able to handle all the extra jobs and stuff. Well, but what if you go to like 750, right? So right now you're making 22 grand. If you go to 750, well, now it's like 34 grand, right? And then, once you get to that hurdle, it's like, okay, we're going to do 1,500, right? So that means you have an extra $67,000 coming into your pocket because you're doing this stuff. This is where it gets interesting, where you can actually start like hiring employees and all that kind of stuff. And I'll show you something that's really cool afterwards. So if you haven't seen it before, it's very interesting. So again, this is what I've done, and then it's like, I saw 1,500 works. All right, we're going to start spending $3,000, right? And this is where we get the profit. So because we started spending so much money on advertising, well, then I was able to hire the employees over time. And then because of that, again, I went from 80 hours to 5. So, and not only that, but, it was myself working 80 plus my wife working 80. So that's 160 hours. Now I work about 5 hours a week. She might work maybe 10, maybe 15 if it's really bad. We do have a new hire coming in, so it'll be a little bit longer. But anyway, say, basically even worst case, 15 hours a week. I'm doing 5. So we went from 160 hours a week between the two of us down to 20. Okay. By doing this. Okay. Now, for the people that say you can't afford the employees, I'm going to show you something really cool. Next, we're going to go into the job hour adjuster. I'll submit this thing. Okay. Now, let me go into the jobs. So what we're seeing here on the left-hand side is this is the average number of minutes that you're working per job. Okay. So this is minutes here. This is the total hours here. The way we know that is when you're entering in your jobs, it's not only just the price and materials, labor, okay, but it's also your personal time, because in business, there's two things you really have to worry about. You have to worry about how much money you're making. You have to worry about how much time you're working, right? Because, if you have a family at home, it doesn't make sense to own your own business if you're making 60 grand a year working 80 hours a week. Yeah, you're on your own. Yeah, it seems like you're more successful. Yeah, like your family and friends might think you're super successful because you started your own business and everything else. But if you're working 80 hours a week, making just as much as you could have from a 9-to-5 job, well, why are you doing this, right? For the glory, for to not be home, to not be able to see your kids, right? So that's where this is super important. We're going to start looking at this stuff, right? So what we did here is for this particular job, I just put in that you were on the phone about 15 minutes. You spent 15 minutes in emails, about 90 minutes for the on-site estimate. So this is like if it took you 30 minutes to get there, 30 minutes to get back, and 30 minutes to actually perform the quote, that's 90 minutes, right? Next thing is, how long did it take you to send the proposal? How long did it take you to order materials? How long did it take you to deliver the materials? So if you have to physically go pick them up and all that kind of stuff, put your time in there. The installation. So pretend it took you about 10 hours for this installation because you were the one installing the fence or whatever you happen to be selling. We put that in here. The final payment and advertising, like if you're doing like door to door, stuff like that. So anyway, it comes up and it'll tell you how many hours and the gross hourly rate. Make sense? Okay, great. So then we come back to here. So this is what we currently are doing. Now, like I said, for the people that say you can't afford to hire someone, right? This is when you start the advertising and everything else, you're actually going to realize pretty quickly it's not that hard to pay for someone. Okay. Because before we do anything, right, we have the current jobs per week. So a lot of people, and I've talked about this in numerous other videos, but if you haven't heard it before, but when you were talking about, like if you say I need to book more jobs, that's not good enough. Okay. Because basically whatever you tell your brain's going to do it for you. Right. So if you tell yourself that I need to book more jobs, well, if you book one more job this week, well, then you booked more jobs. Right. So that's all your brain is going for. But if you say, no, I need to book 4 jobs every single week, you're going to figure out a way to do it. Like it just happens because you're telling your brain starts thinking about it. And I know this sounds absolutely crazy, but it actually is true. But basically, if any kind of problem, like think about if there was a problem that you couldn't solve, right? And the next day at night you go to bed and you wake up the following morning and you magically had the answer for the problem that you're trying to figure out for like hours the day before. How did that happen? It's because your brain works on autopilot. And like when it's not physically like interacting with anything, it's actually working through life's problems for you, right? So anyway, this program will tell you how many jobs that you need to book per week. And the way it figures out is you put in your business, personal expenses, and then it puts everything into place for you. Okay. Anyway, so right now, based upon all this information that you need to book about 4 jobs per week, you're working about 43 hours per week, right? Now, here's the fun part. Now, we're going to get rid of the installation. So because you start hiring and everything else, now you think you can actually hire and, afford an employee, right? So we're going to take this down to 0. So let's see. Oh, I guess before we go any further, how does it know how much like this employee is going to cost you, right? Is it just pulling stuff out of thin air? No. So what you do is you put in your rates, like how much would you be paying someone for phone calls, emails, like, so this would be more office work. This might be someone else. This might be office work, someone else, like that's your install crews. That could be office, office, whatever. So anyway, what you're going to do is whatever you think you would be paying someone per hour, you're going to put that here. Okay, but the only thing to remember is whatever you think you're going to pay, add 40% because you have to cover workman's comp and payroll taxes and like all that kind of fun stuff, right? So if you're going to do $20 an hour, well, it's really $28 an hour, right? So we got that there. So going back here. So because we took off 410 minutes, so what's that, like 5 hours and some change, 5 hours, 10 minutes, it's going to cost you about $191, okay? So before you needed to book about 3.8 jobs per week. Well, not about, like 3.8 jobs per week. And because you hired this employee, what you're going to have to do now is you actually have to book about a half a job extra per week. In the grand scheme of things, and actually it's not about, it's a half a job per week. Or 26 jobs per year. But in grand scheme of things, like if you're already booking 4 jobs a week, well, to get to 4.5, it's really not that big of a deal, right? It's basically 1 job or 2 jobs a month, somewhere around there. Okay. So now we're coming down here. So you're originally working 43 hours. Well, because you hired that employee, now you're only working 19. Now you can spend all those other hours actually working on your business. So figuring out like what else is broken in your business, figuring out like what all these fires are, happening and you're putting them out every day. Well, now you're going to have time to figure out why they're starting and stop them from starting, right? It's crazy. So you're basically saving 24 hours per week. 24. Okay, so that's over 1,000 hours per year because you hired someone, because you spent the time and actually started advertising. Or you could have really been doing this if you're already booking enough jobs. Like you'll be able to see all this stuff. But if you already have enough people, then you hire someone and then you actually spend time with your family. Like it's crazy. It's literally this simple. So anyway, if you like this kind of program, like you can see, it's super simple. Like adding in the stuff, it's like next to no time. You basically, to track your job, you put in the creation date, whatever that happens to be. You can put in the customer name if you want. The job type, this you'll put in yourself because you really want to start figuring out what jobs are more important than the others. Because some are going to be way more profitable, right? And I guess how would you know that, right? Well, again, like we have 3 jobs, and this video wasn't supposed to be that long, but if you're still watching, great, I guess. But anyway, so we put in the types of jobs. We have an aluminum job, we have a cedar, and a chain link job. Now, this works for anything that you do because when you first set up this account, like there's going to be no job type. You add your own job type. So it may be, if you're doing plumbing or HVAC or whatever, it works for all that. Okay. So, and like I said, when you put in your jobs, you're putting in your profit, all that kind of stuff, and the amount of minutes for each one. So now if you want to figure out, like, if you want to see which jobs are most profitable and which take the less time and all that kind of stuff, well, funny thing you should ask, because now, same thing, you put in your date range, job type adjuster, all, and we're going to search it. Okay. So as of right now, because I only put one job in each one, it's basically each job is 33% of my total. Okay. What you're going to see over here is the average profit. So you can see here right away, this is the most profitable job by far. This one's only 1,000. This is 15. This is 2,500, right? Then you come over for the average hours. Same thing. Whatever the case may be, maybe you guys aren't as strong in aluminum or whatever you happen to sell. So then you have to be on the job more. Or maybe because you have to pick up the materials and deliver them, that means you're working more. And as opposed to this, the cedar, maybe you keep this in stock in your, on your lot. And because of that, you just pull from the material. It doesn't take you any extra time, all that kind of stuff. Same thing for the chain link. Maybe you have to go pick that stuff up, right? So what does this mean? Well, what it means is most people wouldn't say, you know what, I'm just going to completely eliminate some kind of service, right? Because that's too scary, because you're like, well, what if I don't book enough jobs and all this kind of stuff, and I don't want to be broke and all that, right? And I understand that. So I'm not asking you to eliminate it. What I'm looking for you to is to scale it back, right? So we already see that this cedar is way the best thing that you can do. So let's pretend we got this to 50% instead of 33. And then the other two, we got to 25%. So what's that going to do for your business? Not that much, right? Well, you went from needing 3.84 jobs per week now to only 3.4. So you're saving about 22 jobs per year that now it's 22 less jobs that you need to do each year. So you're working less because it's more profitable. So would you rather do 100 jobs or 75? I want to do 75. Actually, I'd rather raise my prices even more and do 50, but that's just me. Okay. But even more importantly, right? You're making just as much money, but you go from 43 hours to 35. You're saving yourself a whole work day, or 417, or actually 418 hours per year, because you started, one, because you actually looked at your stuff, and two, because you started doing something about it, right? And so this is pretty cool. But anyway, if you're interested in this, you can look in the link in the description. But like I said, it's called the Profit Planner. It's only $27 a month. It's free for the first 30 days. And it basically has all kinds of other cool stuff. You can actually go through and see what happens when you raise or lower your prices. I've done this numerous other times. But anyway, so here's where, right now you're charging $5,000 on average for a job. Okay. Now we're going to pretend that you raise your prices by $500, right? Oops, I'm sorry. We're looking at here. So the average profit is 33%. We're going to change that to 40. So actually, we're not even going up that much. We're only going up $333. Actually, let's tweak that. Actually, you know what? Everyone says about the 50%. So let's just do that, right? So we're doing 50%, right? So instead of 33, you're on to 50%. So now you have to charge an extra $833. So now instead of charging $5,000, you might have to do $58. And for most people, you say, well, that's not possible. And if that's where your head is, let's drop this down to 40. Can you charge an extra $333 instead of $5,000? Can you charge $53.33? I think you can do that, right? That's not a big stretch. Now, like for the people that say that's not going to make a big difference, well, what we have two options. You can either work less hours or you can make more money. So if you're already working too many hours and you just want to cut back so you can see your family and stuff, well, you just raise your prices a little bit, right? So $333, what can that do for you? Well, now you're going from 3.8 jobs per week to 3.2. It's saving yourself 33 jobs per year, almost a job per week that you wouldn't have to do because you raise your price by only $333, right? And you go from 43 hours to 36. You're saving yourself 7 hours per week or 372 hours per year because you raise your prices by $300. This shit's crazy, right? Now, if you wanted to make just as much money, you want to work just as hard, you want to book the same amount of jobs, right? Well, what happens is you make an extra $1,000 per week or $55,000 per year because you decide to raise your price by $333, not even 10%. Anyway, there's more stuff in there. There's weekly hour adjuster, so you can see how much more or less money you would make if you worked either more or less hours. The expense adjuster, that's for if you wanted to see what would end up happening if you wanted to buy like another home, you wanted to buy a warehouse or start renting or whatever it may be. It'll tell you how many more jobs you have to work or less jobs. And it will also tell you how many more hours or less hours that you have to work, depending on what you're doing. Because you might have too much crap and you want to downsize. So you can see how much less you're going to be working. Advertising adjuster, we talked about that in the beginning of the video. Job type adjuster, we just went over that. And then the profit adjuster, we just went over that. So anyway, $27 a month. This thing it's like basically a business coach in a program. So anyway, hope you have an awesome day. Sorry it was 20 minutes. I thought it was going to be like 3. Have a great day. See ya.